Hello and welcome to Robinson Hall Experts Talk. My name's Laura Saunders and I'm the Marketing and PR Manager at Robinson Hall. And today I have Polly Sewell, Partner and Rural Surveyor with me to talk about the Sustainable Farming Incentive Scheme. Polly has been with Robinson Hall for over 17 years and has been heavily involved with all aspects of rural property services. This includes valuations, estate management, landlord and tenant matters, farm support schemes and compulsory purchase. Please note that this recording was pre-election. So, hello Polly.
Morning, Laura.
So let's kick off. First things first, what is the Sustainable Farming Incentive?
So the Sustainable Farming Incentive, or SFI, is DEFRA's newest environmental scheme. So they launched it as a pilot in 2021, 2022. It had a really low uptake at that stage. Then there was a bigger uptake last year, so SFI 2023. Quite a lot of people moved into that, and they've been applying for that up to a few weeks ago. They've just launched SFI 2024, and that will be open for applications from the 22nd of July. Unless there are a few people that, if you do an expression of interest, the RPA are taking a few early applicants as a sort of trial into the new scheme. It's a 3-year scheme, and it's basically based on actions. So there are hundreds of actions. Farmers can choose the actions that fit their farm, and you get paid a rate per action. So pounds per hectare or pounds per metre, or a set rate for sort of management plans.
You touch on that there was a low uptake initially. Do you think, is there a reason why you think farmers possibly didn't jump on it straight away?
There was a sort of lack of clarity in the scheme, what the rules were, and the payment rates weren't particularly exciting. And I think that did put some people off. A lot of people are also in countryside stewardship, and so we're sort of thinking, do we want another scheme sitting on top of it? Mm-hmm. And also at that point, we did still have good payments under the basic payment scheme. So I think really as those have started going down, people have started looking at replacement funding more.
Okay. And how does it differ to the countryside stewardship scheme?
So now it's actually a very similar scheme. It's taken over from the countryside stewardship mid-tier. So from this year, there won't be any more mid-tier countryside stewardship applications. Okay. But nearly all of those options have been put into SFI.
So do you think it will replace it entirely?
So we've still got higher tier countryside stewardship, which is for those people who want to go a step further and do more actions. It's a 10-year scheme, right, and you have to have Natural England consent to apply.
Okay.
But yes, in general, this will be the main scheme that most people will be looking at.
So it's 3 years, but do you think that could be extended?
So there are a few options that are 5 years.
Right.
Now, just in this new scheme, a few, not many. It looks like there should be renewals, but we don't know if they'll extend it for longer than 3 years. Obviously, we've got a change of government probably coming. We don't know what's going to come under that.
There could be some changes.
Yeah, but it's now a popular scheme, and I'd hope they don't reinvent the wheel, but obviously no guarantees.
And you're saying that obviously the mid-tier countryside stewardship is coming to an end. Currently, can farmers be, if they've got a mid-tier agreement that hasn't yet ended, can they still be obviously on the mid-tier agreement as well as apply for SFI?
Yeah, you can apply for SFI. So even if you had a countryside stewardship scheme last year, you could apply for SFI 2023 on top of that. You can now then add an SFI 2024 agreement on top of those. So I think I've got one person who's got 2 countryside stewardship schemes, an SFI 2023, and we'll do an SFI 2024.
Right.
It does make, logistically, it quite difficult because you have to do an annual claim for each, and the SFI has different timings to countryside stewardship, but it is doable. What they won't do is pay you for doing the same thing twice.
I was just going to ask that. So if you've got like a parcel of land which is in one of the schemes and you want to put it in the SFI, that's not possible?
No, it is. You just have to use different actions.
Fine.
So if you've already got a wild bird mix in countryside stewardship, you wouldn't be able to do a wild bird mix. You wouldn't probably be able to do a land-based option because you've already used that up on that parcel.
Okay.
But you might be able to do soil management or hedge management around the edges.
Yeah, got you. Okay, that's good to know. Do you think farmers should be part of SFI?
So there are non-profitable parts of nearly every farm. Even the best farm will have corners and, odd-shaped fields, which realistically don't earn a lot of income from farming. And looking at an SFI action may actually earn more than carrying on trying to farm that non-profitable bit of land. There are also SFI actions which sit entirely alongside farming. So there are particular options which, whilst they might change the management a bit, they don't change what you have to do on the land. So for example, with arable cropping, you can get the companion cropping option. So we've got quite a lot of people who grow oilseed rape, and they're growing a buckwheat companion crop with that oilseed rape. It's meant to help with pest management, and you get paid £45 a hectare for that under SFI.
Okay, that's good to know. And I guess with soil management, a lot of farmers will do that as well, won't they? So you might as well get paid for doing something that you do already.
Yeah, there's a lot of people where I say you can get paid for it, and they say, well, we've already done organic matter soil testing. As long as you've had those done in the last 5 years, you can use those tests.
Really, then it's a yes. Farmers should certainly consider SFI, especially if it's going to obviously be replacing countryside stewardship or parts of countryside stewardship. And obviously it'll be interesting to see what the new government plans for farming. Are there certain actions that farmers should be more aware of than others? You've touched on some that obviously farmers are doing already, such as like the nutrient management and the soil management. So it would be silly not to kind of have those as options. But is there anything that perhaps isn't necessarily getting much interest that farmers possibly should reconsider or have a look at because of possibly the pounds that they get per hectare? Or, what are your thoughts?
There are hundreds of options under the scheme. And I have to admit, we do tend to use the same options time and time again. There are very common options that fit very well with especially arable farming, so the wild bird food options, the flower-rich margins and plots options. There are some new options that are coming under the new scheme, so that were originally in countryside stewardship but are only just being introduced into SFI, so like unharvested cereal headlands and summer cover crops and things like that, which might help people where they're looking for a break crop alternative if they're struggling to find a profitable break crop.
Yeah.
The RPA have now capped some of the options so that you can only have a total of 25% of the holding in those options. They've seen a huge amount of land being taken out of production and have obviously realised that's perhaps not a good thing. And so some of those really common options, so the wildflower mixes, the wild bird mixes, you can now only put 25% of your holding into those options.
And also with things like the wild bird, because obviously I presume that there isn't a set time that every farmer applies. Farmers are applying at different times. So how do you think that the RPA are going to monitor kind of what's growing and what's getting established, especially like with the weather that we've had?
Yeah, so it's a rolling application window for SFI, so you can apply at any time. You put your application into the RPA, they then look through it and make you an agreement offer. And once you accept your agreement offer, your agreement will start on the first day of the following month.
Right.
So it does logistically make it quite difficult, certainly for some options. So most options you have to establish the crop or whatever it is, the wild bird mix, in the first year of the scheme. So that gives you plenty of time and plenty of windows to get that established. There are certain options which start from the date of application, and the most problematic one of those at the moment is the no insecticide payment. Because when you apply, whatever fields you put into that action, you can't spray them with insecticide for a year. And if you apply in, say, January, that's quite complicated because it doesn't fit with a cropping year. Whereas if you apply in August or September, it works quite well because it fits with the cropping year. And you can change the fields in the action each year on the review date of your agreement.
Right.
So fitting with the cropping year, certainly for that particular option, is a lot more beneficial.
And you can have more than one SFI agreement, can you? So you could almost take that out of your, if you wanted to apply straight away, take that option out and possibly do another one.
Yeah,
that
so
works.
we've got people who've looked at just having a no insecticide payment agreement. It's just then you can only stack that option on certain other options. So you just need to make sure they all fit together.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, how do they apply? You've touched on the fact that you obviously need to apply, I presume, through the RPA. And I guess, is it quite a complicated process with all the options that are available?
So the RPA have tried to make it as simple as possible.
Okay.
And yeah, it is through the same portal that you would have done your basic payment or your countryside stewardship and your claims through. The complication generally arises where you've already got a countryside stewardship or SFI scheme running. Whilst the RPA say they will check that there's no crossover and that your actions can be used on those parcels, it doesn't always pick them up. And especially your countryside stewardship rotational options, you do have to be quite careful that you're not choosing an SFI action that would mean you couldn't move your countryside stewardship rotational option onto that field later in the year, say.
Yeah.
There are certain intricacies. So like a particular problem we have is the no insecticide payment is a whole field option, but you can't claim it on field margins. So they have made an allowance that you can, as long as you claim the field margin area first, you should then be able to reduce your no insecticide payment area, and it should accept it. It doesn't always. So we just sometimes then have to speak to the RPA and get them to make manual changes.
So it sounds like it'd be better to get a land agent to apply for you, because they'd be able to obviously cross-reference everything, make sure that there aren't any duplications, check the acreage and everything else that is required when applying.
I think because we do a bulk of them, we've generally come across most of the issues that can arise, and we can work a way around it, or we know how to explain to the RPA what the issue is and ask them to make the changes. Rather than saying, I've got a problem, how do we fix it? We can say, we've got a problem, please fix it by doing this, because we've had that experience with them before. But equally, a straightforward application where you're not in another scheme and you're only claiming certain, minimal options, people can do it themselves.
Okay. Do you know what changes are ahead? You've touched on a few, and obviously there's a 2023 and a 2024 scheme, and obviously there's a general election early July, so it's probably asking you to look into a crystal ball. But is there anything that hasn't yet been announced but is talked about that possibly is worth sharing?
So we know that they're going to announce, or were planning to announce, some further actions that will be added to SFI 2024 later this year.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't know if that will still go ahead, but the plans were to add a payment for educational access, which currently does exist under countryside stewardship, but isn't in SFI yet. So you'll get paid for invited schools or clubs to come to the farm and show them around. And they've just generically said there will be more actions added for farmland and wildlife, but we haven't really got any more detail on what they are.
And hopefully that'll be autumn, but it could possibly be later, I guess, with the new government. We'll have to wait and see. How long you've said that the scheme obviously lasts 3 years, and I did actually ask you this initially about whether you think it might be extended. You mentioned that there were some schemes that are 5. I guess there's no knowing, but it would seem like it possibly will be extended, possibly to 10, I can imagine, if it's going to replace countryside stewardship, but I guess we're surmising. Do you have anything else to say on that? So
in countryside stewardship, when the 5-year agreements came to an end, the RPA did give people the option to simply renew on exactly the same basis. So if you were very happy with your scheme and you didn't want to change anything, you could just roll it again, so another 3 years. Hopefully they will do that sort of thing, because if people have put a lot of thought into their SFI and it's working really well for them, then you'd hope that they could just not have to go through the whole application process again. And you can, with SFI, make changes each year. So at the end of your agreement year, you can add options, you can increase the area of options, and you can also reduce the area of each option by up to 50%.
Right.
So you can't take an option out entirely, but you can reduce it. And it's because it's designed to fit with the cropping rotation on a farm. So they acknowledge that the rotational options do need to be able to change each year.
So if you put like wild bird seed down in one parcel of land, you could actually move it to another. Is that what
You
you're
can
saying?
move it to another, and you can reduce it or increase it.
Okay, so there's a bit of flexibility to be had. I mean, it sounds like the scheme is worth doing. How do you think it'll affect farming? Obviously, initially when it was launched, I think that there was possibly an element of, oh my God, what's going to happen to farming? I know some contractors were a bit worried that they might not be doing any kind of ploughing or cultivations or anything on farms with, the options available and the attractive incentives that were there. Obviously, this has been refined so that you can't just put your entire farm down as like wild bird, for example, which obviously is a very good thing for farming. But can you see there being any effect on farming with the options that are available at the moment?
Yeah, so we have seen, as you say, huge areas of land being taken out under countryside stewardship initially, and then under the first sort of applications in SFI. There are still some options available, so you can take big areas out. So say the NUM3 option, which is the legume fallow, there's currently no limitation on that.
Right.
And that did used to be a rotational option, so you could rotate it around, but in the new SFI 2024, that is a fixed option. So it has to be in the same place for 3 years.
Okay.
And currently there's no limitation on putting the whole farm into that option if people want to. I think the other thing with the scheme is it does provide a certainty of income, and that's quite difficult to come by in farming. And I think that is why people are looking at it, more closely, especially with the difficulties with weed control, so blackgrass control, and people looking more at their break crops. It's quite hard to find a profitable break crop, and actually if you can use an unharvested cereal or a legume fallow in some way to help with your rotation, then I think people are looking at that quite closely.
Okay. So we can obviously help farmers apply for the scheme, and we can guide them and support them. And obviously you don't have to be a current client if you would like to approach us and help you with your scheme, or even if you're kind of midway through applying and you need a little bit of advice, don't hesitate to contact us. Are there any other points worth making?
So I think the thing to think about the scheme is it can fit every farm. So farmers can choose entirely how much they want to change the way they farm by using the scheme. So you can choose actions which fit with your existing farming model, or you can be radical and fully look at how you might change your farming model and fit the scheme into that as well. And we've got people who've done both. We've got people who, especially at permanent pasture farms, there aren't that many options for permanent pasture. So we've got a lot of people who just use the low input grassland option. It fits alongside their farming. They're not really changing what they do, but they're getting some money. And we've got arable farmers who have, really looked at it in a big way and started using cover crops and overwintered stubbles and that sort of thing to change how they're managing their soil.
So it almost makes, it was probably making some farmers kind of reinvent the wheel and think, right, let's have a look at the bigger picture. What are we currently getting? How are we making money? And almost like a bit of a business strategy. How's the SFI going to impact us? Is it worth doing? And what return are we going to get? So I guess for some, it is kind of, quite a substantial change if that's the way you want to go down. But I guess it really depends on you and your business model and what works for you. So thank you, Polly, and thank you ever so much for giving us a lot of insight into SFI. It's a heavily talked about subject. I'm sure you've seen lots of news articles. We've actually written a couple of news articles on it. It's ever changing by the sounds of it, and obviously with the new government and the election around the corner, there's going to be more changes to be had. So we will make sure that we keep everyone up to date. We might even do another podcast on the changes, but let's wait and see. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that you follow us, subscribe. I'll be running a series of podcasts, and obviously all of them will be related to what we specialise in as land and property professionals. So hopefully you'll find them very informative. Polly Sewell's contact details are dotted around the website, but the best place to look for them if you want to find them quickly is on the Meet the Team page. There's a staff profile with a lovely photo of Polly and also her mobile and her email address. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact Polly. Many thanks. Until next time. Goodbye.